Hi, Stephen. Great to see you again. It was wonderful spending a few days together, listening to wonderful presentations at the conference. Can you tell us a bit more about what you do and your role with the society?
Thank you for doing this interview with me, BB. It was really great meeting you and everybody else at the conference as well. And I send my regards to anyone watching who was at the conference. And if you weren't able to attend, well, you were here with us in spirit. Basically, I'm kind of an independent scholar. I do have a background in history from Oakland University. I was a student there. And I graduated in 2020, right when the pandemic hit. Perfect timing, as we say in English. And basically, I've been a member of the society since, I believe, 2013. I actually managed to read a article by Vlad Alelekian-Izyetkov on the evolution of civilizational sciences. And I contacted him and I said, I read your article on this issue and it was very interesting. We started bouncing ideas back and forth. Then he kind of encouraged me, one, to join the society, and also two, he's like, yeah, let's do some work together. And that culminated in our joint project on revolutions from the civilizational perspective, which we gave at the 2014 conference at Monmouth University. Yes, the exact same Monmouth University that we just had our previous conference at. And there was a very positive reception there. I also got to meet a lot of the other people there for the first time. And I seemed to really get along with a lot of the members there. Then around, I believe it was 2016, I also contributed to the newsletter, and I was also offered the position of editor of the newsletter, and I, accepted. I said, well, this is great. This is a good way to contribute to the society and also, get some experience in academia, academic research, and so forth. I did that for about 2 years. Unfortunately, in 2018, I started to have the first of what would eventually become 8 or up, depending on how you count them, up to 10 surgeries on my left eye due to an injury that I had sustained. And then it caused my retina to detach and they had to correct it and so forth. I was also going to school at the time, and I still remember this. I believe it was in October, my second surgery. I had surgery on Monday. On Wednesday, I had to do a midterm for my class on biology and society, which was actually a really good class. We discussed what are the implications of biology and biological research on social issues, kind of how those two interact. And then on Friday, I had to complete a draft for my chapter on the European Union for it was Crisis and Renewal, I believe, if I remember correctly, by ISSC member Mark Selinsky. So that was kind of the most extreme, but that's almost like what I had to deal with
Wow.
On a constant basis. And yeah, it was, and then just trying to maintain also going back and forth with a regular daytime job, nothing glamorous to speak about, just trying to pay the bills and get by. So eventually I had to kind of resign from editor of the newsletter. But with the pandemic and also I was still kind of out with my last surgery, they were trying to keep an eye on it. But it also offered me an opportunity to kind of complete some projects that I had in the works for years, but of course, because of the surgeries I had to delay. That led to my article for the Comparative Civilizations Review of the dynamics of hybrid warfare. Now, hybrid warfare, it's a complex term, but basically it just means it's a mix of conventional and unconventional topics. It was mostly kind of arose out of the conflict in Ukraine, not the current one, but the one in 2014. And I kind of was examining this not just in the Ukraine context, but in a wider context, because I saw this kind of part of a larger discussion that had occurred about what are the dynamics of war and geopolitics after the end of the Cold War, including Samuel P. Huntington's famous Clash of Civilizations thesis. So I was kind of examining this and trying to tie it all together. And long story short, I did that. Then, of course, I did a bunch of book reviews, including one that addressed the issue of what's called the revolution in military affairs. And I was addressing the issue, and as I wrote, it was when the American forces were planning their withdrawal from Afghanistan. But by the time it got published, there was the final withdrawal. So I noticed the editors had to edit my phrase because I said, well, they're planning a withdrawal. And it's like, well, they've already withdrawn. And then, of course, the issue of Ukraine, of course, in the more current situation arose. So I thought possibly expanding further the research that I did from hybrid warfare. And my talk was civilizations and strategic studies. Strategic studies, as I said, it's kind of like the interdisciplinary study of how military force is applied or potentially applied in various different geopolitical contexts. So, of course, I was trying to see how, and I noticed when looking at like what are the contexts that strategy operates, I noticed that these are the exact same type of contexts that we as civilizational scholars study. So I wanted to figure, okay, so how do they interrelate? Are they kind of parallel? Are they, interrelated? And I always kind of have this famous take on Clausewitz's famous phrase, war is a continuation of politics by other means. And I said, well, maybe civilizations and strategy are continuations of each other in different ways. And I also had that famous quote from Colin S. Gray, who was a prominent strategic thinker, about how human communities of various kinds have their own strategic contexts that they operate in. And when I read that, I was like, oh, isn't that kind of similar to like what we're studying, like with human communities and civilizations? So it's kind of a different direction for civilizational study, but I think also it's kind of interesting that with the context of what we're dealing with right now, both with Russia, but also other contexts around the world, where this would be very useful. And it's also kind of, even outside of like the purely military aspects, it still has relevance, like for international relations and so forth, which are very popular topics of civilizational scholars, which was also the main theme of the panel that me and Vlad Alekian Izyekov did at the conference this past weekend.
Thanks for explaining and telling us more about yourself. That's great. One important thing, you won an award, the Arnold Toynbee Award at the conference. So tell us, what does that mean for you?
And forgive me, I still haven't unpacked the award, so I can't show it, but I did take a picture of it and I was like sending it via text message to like all my friends, like, hey, I just got this award. It is a great honor to get the award. It was also a very good recognition of like some of the hard work and the struggles that I have gone through with, trying to do scholarship and also just battling, the personal issues like the 8 to 10 surgeries on my eye, which if you've never been in a surgery, it really knocks you out. And especially to go through 8, like literally almost every other month I was going in and out of surgery. And it was just, it was funny because even a friend like once told me, it's like, oh, remember this funny incident? And I was like, oh no, because the anesthesia actually can, mess with your memory temporarily because of that. So the point I'm trying to make is yeah, it was a real personal struggle. Yeah, and it sometimes will weigh heavily on you. I know that personally, where almost like I was kind of wondering, like, what am I even doing? Like, why am I doing this? Like, is this even worth it to pursue this further? And the award, in a way, was kind of like saying, yes, it was worth it to go through all those struggles. It was worth it, and you kind of got recognition. And I must also recount what one person said to me in a private context. It was like, no, please continue with your studies, with your research and all that, because you really have the potential to be a true intellectual leader, in both the field, but even in general in academia. Uh, and I have to say, I mean, I couldn't sleep that night anyways, but it was just that kept playing back in my mind because it really deeply touched me that I got that type of encouragement because of course during the struggles it was just very, very difficult. And sometimes, you have to do it when you're in scholarship. Sometimes you have to be in it for the long haul, and it's just it can take years to see any real results. And of course in that time period you can suffer like from self-doubt, in some cases even like depression and so forth. I'm trying not to make it like give sob stories, but I'm just saying it can be difficult. But then when you have like an award like that, it really can just like really right, like visually but also just very concretely kind of show, no, it was for a purpose. It was for a greater purpose.
Oh, that's wonderfully expressed, Stephen. What would be your takeaway from the conference? What would you tell others now? Oh, this is what I learned at the conference. This is why you should come next time.
Well, just like the variety of topics that were being addressed, and just also how we are kind of taking some of these issues that are affecting the world right now and in the near future very seriously. And also just how, in some ways, you get, even though you may have your own topic, but then you might see something with a different angle, a different nuance that you might not have considered this. And I remember one example because I managed to get Christopher Coker, who has gained a lot of attention because of his work on the civilization state. And we managed to organize a Zoom recording quite similar to this for the conference because unfortunately Coker couldn't make it in person. He actually attended another conference in New York in May, so it was just too soon for him to try to return to America. But there was also another talk, Robert Badesky, on the relationship between the civilization and the state. Now he kind of had a different angle and a different nuance, but it was kind of interesting. And even after his talk, I kind of, it was really very good. And even he said, yeah, that talk by Christopher Coker, I really paid attention. That really, cause, as we say in English, it caused a light bulb to go off. That, where you get that aha moment where, oh yeah, something clicks in your mind, and all of a sudden you can just think of all sorts of complex stuff in your head. You get the point. But yeah, so it was just kind of interesting just seeing how it overlaps and so forth. And sometimes, of course, you get kind of caught off guard. I remember that with my talk where all of a sudden I was asked like, oh well, yeah, Carlos Gray, you mentioned him, but then he argues this, that, and that. Can you defend that? And I remember I said, well, that'll definitely be a 15-hour discussion because I made the joke. Well, I only have 15 minutes. I don't have 15 hours. But then I had to say, well, that will definitely be a 15-hour discussion. And also, I learned you can make the screen go blank in a mere second because for some reason I just accidentally pushed this one button on the computer screen, and then the whole screen went blank. And someone actually comments like, yeah, the look you gave when you first saw that was just so it was just so hilarious because I was just like, what the heck, what happened, like why is it blank? So then we were trying to get this IT person, but then I saw like, oh, blank screen, and it looked like it was on, so I just pushed it and it was back to normal. So I learned some IT stuff along the way. So yeah, for people who are interested in just major issues like macro scale research on like human communities, social sciences, but even complexity sciences is one area I've noticed that has really grown that can be of interest to people. But I've met people who do literature, philosophy, and then of course also Michael Andrick. He does intelligence studies, and yeah, we're it was almost like he was trying to provoke like a friendly rivalry of sorts at the conference. That was kind of a little bit hilarious there. But yeah, you meet people from different backgrounds, different parts of the world, and sometimes you'll hear about things that you never even considered. And I think there's just so many implications, and it's just for anyone who is remotely interested in this, even though civilizations per se may not be your focus, you'll still learn something. You might learn something about history. You might learn something about your field of expertise. I think there was even a talk on artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend that one because I had to leave early due to other commitments. But yeah, that just shows the wide range of topics that get addressed at these conferences. And plus also you get, in our case, we get to see Monmouth University with the former home of President Woodrow Wilson, which, yeah, I was even showing one of our guests from Poland that house, and he was really deeply impressed by it.
It's a deeply rooted historical place. Monmouth
Yeah.
University. You know, when you mentioned that you don't necessarily have to be sort of invested in civilizations, for example, to attend. I myself am not a scholar, and I found all the presentations very interesting, and they gave me new perspectives about actually also the world I live in.
Yes, and I do appreciate your work on music, because that is like an expression of how cultures express themselves. You see this well, even in classical music in the West, but also even especially in different forms of folk music, where you could see like the commonalities between the different styles. Like, for example, very famously here in America, like Irish, Celtic folk music. But even if you listen to, like, say, Ukrainian or Polish folk music, you see commonalities, but you also see different nuances, like different twists and nuances. And it's always kind of interesting. And it's just, that's a new angle from which to study civilizations, as opposed to just simply political or even philosophical or sociological. Those all matter, but I mean, we also like to branch out to other different fields and other angles, which in my view is very important. And also, as I kind of was joking with a lot of my colleagues, is Mozart is really good for deep thinking about civilizations. It's just, I don't know why, but whenever I'm having to like do a lot of research and all that, I always have got to play on Mozart, or at the very least the classical period, which is, for those who don't know, is like about 1750 to about 1820. Just think Mozart, Haydn, and also Beethoven towards the end. But of the two, I noticed Mozart is really good for like deep thought. Beethoven is good for if you just want to relax, and it's like for deep emotional feelings. That's just my perspective, but I'm sure you would probably know more about that than me.
Oh, Stephen, thanks very much for this, and especially for the last part about classical music, as from my perspective. So once again, thanks for this talk, and please don't forget to open the award, unpack it.
Thank you. Thank you. It was nice to be.
And see you next time.
Yep. See you next time.
Bye-bye.